On the 1st of April 2014, two Dutch girls, Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, leave their hostel at Boquete without informing anyone about their destination or when they expect to return. Around 1300 hours, the girls reach the top of the Mirador, which is part of the Continental Divide. At 1400 hours, they take their last daylight picture while crossing the first stream. At 1639 and 1652, the girls make two failed alarm calls on their mobile phones. At diner time, the owner of the hostel waits in vain for the girls, but she is not overly worried when they not appear. Unaware that the girls never return during the night, the hostel owner leaves breakfast on the diner table before heading into town. At 6:58, shortly after sunrise, the girls make another failed alarm call. At 8 o'clock, Feliciano and Eileen wait in vain for Kris and Lisanne at the nearby language school. Meanwhile, at 8:14, the girls make another failed alarm call. After waiting at the school, Eileen and Feliciano walk over to the hostel, where they discover Kris and Lisanne did not return to the hostel the previous night. At 10:52, there are two failed alarm calls. This is followed on 11:13 by a magnitude 6 earthquake. At 1700 hours, when there is still no sign of the girls, Eileen calls the parents of Lisanne to ask if they know where their daughter is. This is the first time the parents hear about their missing daughter. At 1900 hours, Eileen and Feliciano head back to Boquete police station, and at 20:30, Kris and Lisanne are declared as missing. In Holland, the parents contact the travel agency at Schiemda, who calls the manager at Bocas del Toro. When the news reaches Marjolein, the manager of the school at Boquete, she remembers hearing the girls talk about the Pianista Trail. This information is passed on to Feliciano. It is early morning in Panama when the parents report their daughters missing at the Dutch police office. This report is forwarded via Interpol to Panama City, and from there to the regional headquarters of Sinaproc at David. At 8 o'clock, Feliciano reports at the Sinaproc office at Boquete, who subsequently interview Eileen and Miriam. At 9:33, the girls make their last two failed alarm calls. Just before noon, Feliciano and a team from Sinaproc head to the Pianista Trail. But shortly afterward, the Sinaproc team is called back by David headquarters and instructed to await the arrival of their commander the next day. Feliciano subsequently travels the Pianista Trail alone, making it all the way to the paddocks, but failing to find any trace of the girls. At 1600 hours, the girls check the phone number of their host Miriam on their phone. However, they do not call this number. In the morning of April 4, 64 hours after their first alarm call, the search for Kris and Lisanne is officially started when the commander of Sinoproc arrives at Boquete.
Yo fui la persona que por un evento que teníamos pendiente de hacer el día miércoles a las 8 de la mañana les fui a buscar, no las encontré y ya al darnos cuenta que no habían dormido en su casa donde habitualmente estaban con la familia, al día siguiente ya cuando se cumplían las horas que estipula la ley para poner denuncia, fuimos ya de que la gente se salga del sendero afuera en el bosque, más bien la gente tiene que continuar caminando dentro del sendero. Lo que pudiera ser posibilidades para la gente como riesgo es que la gente no tome en cuenta la hora de regresar y continúe en el sendero, sí, pero no que se extravíe afuera del bosque, afuera del sendero.
Tell me what could have happened when they stayed here and fell into the water?
Well, most of the time when people want to take pictures next to the stream, they walk on the stones, and the stones are very slippery. They have a lot of moss.
Despite a huge search operation, no sign of the girls is found. Until 10 weeks later, their backpack is found on a river shore. In the following weeks, a few remains of the girls are found, scattered along a long stretch of river shore.
I think she continued the trail.
We zijn hier nou redelijk weer bovenop.
No crees, bueno, para mí yo no creía, ¿verdad?
En
Lo que pasa es que acá es
we horen net dat Feliciano hier op donderdag 3 april zelf ook geweest is. Hij heeft hier niks gezien, ook geen voetstappen of wat dan ook. Was nog een idee van, ja, het is hier een beetje groen gras. Idee van, misschien zijn ze daar gaan kijken. Maar ook dan is weer de vraag van, als ze hier komen, dan maken ze foto's van dit uitzicht. Het is nu niet zo geweldig. Toen was het helder, dus dan kun je prachtig kijken en dan maak je een foto, denken we.
En ze gaan niet van het pad af.
En de weg op hier, nou ja, is één pad. Je kan niet van het pad af. Je kan niet, er zijn geen splitsingen, er zijn geen andere wegen. Je kan alleen maar, als je het pad doorloopt, ja, dan kom je hieruit. En dat is het. En als je het pad door wil lopen, dat is ook helder, dan moet je daarheen. Er is ook maar één weg. Maar goed, het is dus nu, even kijken, 35 minuten vanaf de laatste foto. Dan ben je hier. Dus ja. Geen enkele rotswand gezien, niks waar je in kan vallen, niks waar je uit kan glijden. Het is een volstrekt raadsel. Maar zoals ik al zei, donderdag was hier Feliciano, 3 april. Hij heeft geen spoor gezien. En dat zou toch ook raar zijn geweest. Wij denken dat tussen hier en de plek bij de rivier, waar die laatste foto van Kris is genomen, dat daar iets gebeurd is.
However, if the girls turned back as they were supposed to do, and never reached the paddocks, then they would have reached the top of the Mirador, where their phones would have connected with the local network, long before the first alarm calls. Something must have happened to them on this short patch of trail, which severely delayed them or slowed them down. As we have seen in the previous episode, their sequence of alarm calls is mostly consistent with the situation where they became worried that they could not make it back to Boquete before sunset and would have to spend the night somewhere in the wild. From the autopsy report, we know that Lisanne had 3 broken metatarsal bones. This could be caused by an accident at either the first or second stream crossing. Although very painful, such an injury might not be regarded by the girls as an imminently dangerous situation, but it would delay them and slow them down hugely on their way back. If they had been at or near the paddocks or any open space, spending the night on or close to the trail would not have been a big problem, but the deep and dark trenches must have frightened the girls. At some places, it is possible to avoid the trenches by walking through the forest next to the trail, and in the fading light, the girls may have taken this top side route, hoping to be able to reach the top of the mirador before dark. However, as darkness fell, they may have missed a turn in the trail, causing them to wander off on the eastern slope. Still hopeful they would be able to find the trail back the next morning, they must have spent the first night somewhere in the dense forest. However, in the early morning light, there was still no sign of the trail, and they were not sure which direction to go. The alarm calls in the morning of the second day are consistent with a lost situation, where they keep trying their phones at different spots in the hope of finding a connection. As it makes its way upslope back to the mirador, the trail includes several sharp turns, alternatively following the eastern side and the western side of the ridge. If the girls avoided the darkness of the trenches by walking on top of them, they may have missed one of these turns. This may have left them stranded in the dense vegetation of the eastern slope, unable to find the trail back. Finding the girls in terrain such as this would have been extremely difficult, and as they walked on top of the trenches, they would not have left any visible trails. However, apart from the fact that they were lost, the girls now faced a far more pressing problem, as they probably ran out of water on the first day, and high up on these slopes there are no streams or other sources of water. Although a person can go without food for several weeks, a lack of water will become fatal within a few days. On the second day, as they failed to get a connection on their phones or find the trail back, finding water must have quickly become even more important than finding back the trail. If they had been on the paddocks or on any other place along the trail, they would have been near to water, and they could afford to wait for rescue. But there was no way they could stay for long high up on these slopes. In the afternoon of April 2, the urgent need to find water would have forced them to abandon their search for the trail and head down into the valley, where they would hope to find the first stream. The lack of further alarm calls in the afternoon of April 2 probably indicates the girls were on the move, proceeding down the slope in the hope of finding water. Although vegetation is very dense and progress would be slow, certainly given Lisanne's injured ankle, these slopes do not present a major challenge, and down at the bottom of the valley, the girls would have found water at a small stream. Their initial plan may have been to follow this stream until it merges with the first stream, and then proceed upstream to return to the place where the trail crosses the stream. Proceeding along this stream would be slow, but not impossible, with situations comparable to the stream in the Western Valley which has been traversed. Walking downhill along this stream would have been possible for the girls. However, as they got lower down in the valley, the vegetation on both sides of the stream would be too dense to break through, leaving no other options but to continue downstream. In the afternoon of April 3, when Feliciano walked the trail searching for them, Kris and Lisanne were probably already deep down in the valley and out of earshot. Sadly, the terrain gets more challenging as you go down along the valley, and close to where the eastern stream meets the first stream. The gradient of the terrain becomes more steep with frequent rapids, which would slow the girls down even further. As the stream widens, the boulders in this area get considerably bigger, with some of them resembling features we see in the night pictures, although there is no complete match. The eastern stream finally joins the first stream in a series of stepped waterfalls, which would have been challenging to pass for the two girls, who probably reached this location on April 4 or 5. Here once again we see places which somewhat resemble the location of the night pictures. However, there is no complete match. When the Dutch team led by Frank van der Goot visited this place in January 2015, he wrote, "The riverbed is here 3 to 10 meters wide, with low vegetation along the southern shore, which is littered with large boulders, which are around 3 meters away from the river. The vegetation in this place strongly resembles what we see in the night pictures." Upstream of this place, a 10-meter high waterfall makes it impossible to return to the trail by following the first stream upstream, while downstream there are fierce rapids which prevented the Dutch team from searching any further along the stream. Although the terrain is not exceptionally rough, and there are various routes out of this part of the valley, it is doubtful if the girls in their severely weakened state would have been able to find these trails and make their way back. Accidents such as this usually result from a series of minor missteps, none of which would have been fatal in itself. Spraining an ankle was simple bad luck, and would not have been a big issue in most other cases. And even getting lost on the ridge would not have been fatal if they had carried sufficient water. It was the combination of many minor mishaps which became fatal.